Welcome back. As we mentioned, President Trump is defending making billions of dollars while in office after yesterday's release of his financial disclosures. The president telling reporters his investment decisions are made by outside parties, and he's only profiting because the stock market is up. Although we should note that most of his new wealth is tied to crypto investments. It comes as a bipartisan duo of lawmakers has introduced new legislation aimed at curbing senior officials in all three branches of government, including the president, from trading stocks and betting in prediction markets, arguing that public service should not be an investment strategy. Joining me now are those two lawmakers, part of our Common Ground series. Behind that legislation, Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander of New Hampshire and Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. Thank you both so much for joining us. We always love when we can get people together on both sides of the aisle. But I want to start with this bill. Talk to me about how you decided to team up on this issue, what this legislation would actually would do, and who is actually all covered by it.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to kick it off. I love working with Brian. We saw, I think, a real gap and a real problem. There are many ways that we need to tackle corruption in our government. But I think to us, one of the first things we can do is to clarify the rules of the road for senior officials serving in all three branches of government. Right now, the president, the vice president, members of Congress, justices of the Supreme Court can trade stocks. They can bet on prediction markets. So that means they can sit in a briefing in the morning and trade on that information in the afternoon. And it really undermines the basic trust that the American people have put in senior officials in our government. And so our bill is a first of its kind bill that clearly puts a prohibition on trading stocks and on participating in prediction markets. And it covers all three branches of government, because this is not just a problem isolated to the executive branch, although it is an urgent problem there. It's a problem in Congress, and it's a problem in our courts, too.
And Congresswoman, it was revealed today or yesterday in the financial disclosures from President Trump that he made thousands of individual stock trades. He also made billions since he's become president. What was your reaction to that, especially given this legislation that you're bringing forward?
Yeah, I mean, this is Exhibit A of why we need this legislation. There is a huge void of trust between the public and the institutions, and that's one of the reasons why this legislation is so important. And there have been multiple efforts, Melanie. We started off, way back in the beginning of the Congress. We had a very interesting coalition, myself, Chip Roy, and AOC, so we covered the entire continuum of Congress. We were focused on our own backyard, just dealing with House ethics and insider trading with regard to Congress itself. There was then a move to add in the executive branch, and Maggie, which I think is a brilliant idea, and I second it, is why not include all three branches of government? Because the premise is if you have access to inside information by virtue of your government position, you should be forbidden and precluded from trading on any stock market, including prediction markets. Now, it's going to have to evolve. We're going to have to be flexible because there's all these different types of currencies and all these different markets. So we were just talking even in the back room, how can we make this a living and breathing type definition that will always encapsulate all these new emerging forms of currency?
Does it make it harder to get bipartisan support or even Republican support by including all of these branches of government, including the president himself? I
mean, it should be easy. You know, if you come to Congress wanting to serve the people and you understand that there is a gap in trust, which there is, if you don't believe that, you're living on another planet. And it's our job to try to bridge that gap to restore that trust. And Exhibit A, the first place we need to start is by making sure members of Congress are not using their information that they are learning in committee hearings, that Supreme Court justices aren't learning what they know because they know how they're going to rule on things. And members of the executive branch, the president, the vice president, special government employees, members of the cabinet, they all have access to information. They know what is going to happen and what is not going to happen well in advance of the public. So given that truism, given that fact, there has to be consequences in terms of their, our desire to make sure they cannot trade off of that information.
And Congresswoman, I mentioned how the president said it was third-party investors who made all these decisions. He had no input in this. Would the president's investment managers still be allowed to make these types of stock trades under your bill?
Individual stock trades are prohibited under our bill. You know, we've put in exceptions where it's crystal clear that there is not the possibility of a conflict of interest. But this is a clear rule because what we see are individual trades that are being made by people who are moving the markets themselves. And that's what is undermining public trust so profoundly. At a moment when people are feeling the pain of this affordability crisis. You know, I represent people who are working 2 to 3 jobs right now and still getting crushed by the basic cost of living. And to look and see a president profiteering billions of dollars, in part based on decisions he's making as commander-in-chief, is outrageous, and it's got to stop.
Well, one thing not covered in this bill is the crypto earnings. Is that something, Congressman, you think should be addressed in any way? And do you have any concerns about potential conflicts of interest there?
Yes, it should be included. In fact, Maggie and I were just talking about it. Hence, we need to make this a living and breathing definition. So what we did, and Maggie did a great job with this, is we key off of Title V, Section 13101, which deals with, who is required to submit financial disclosures, because there's already a direct nexus between that population of people and their access to sensitive inside information. But yes, we need to come up with a solution for crypto, and Maggie included prediction markets. We have to encapsulate all of that. That's why we need to make sure that this is a living and breathing concept. The whole point is, if you have currency, no matter what the form is, and you are using inside information to trade on that, it's got to be precluded.
And there is already a law called the Stock Act that exists. There's been lawmakers who have violated, been slapped with penalties before, but no one's ever been prosecuted. So what is different about your legislation? And are you confident that Congress actually has the ability to police itself?
Well, the penalties that have been slapped on are really slaps on the wrist, and they haven't created a basic deterrence from this kind of behavior. Transparency is the first step, but what our bill really does is bring accountability here. Clear penalties. Not only do you return all of the ill-gotten gains, you pay a penalty for breaking this rule, which is a clear ban on individual stock trading and participation in prediction markets. And I think the clarity of the rule and the severity of the penalties are 2 really important pieces of making this work.
And Congressman, have there been any conversations with the White House about potential buy-in for this legislation? Because Trump has, in this past, expressed at least some support for the idea of a ban on stock.
Yeah, not on this piece of legislation. I mean, there have been conversations in the past on other pieces of legislation. Not this one. This is all-encompassing, but we represent a separate and co-equal branch of government. We have to do our job, and that's what we're going to do here.
Republicans have really investigated Hunter Biden's business deals overseas. Do you think there's an oversight role for Congress to investigate the Trump family?
Of course. We are the oversight branch of government. The executive branch of government does not have a dime in its own right? Every dime that the executive branch has needs to be authorized and appropriated by Congress. And yes, we also serve as an oversight role. That's the brilliance of the system of government our founders set up. Our job is to oversee, once we appropriate and fund and authorize, that we oversee how they go about deploying those resources.
And Congresswoman, if Democrats take back the majority, do you think that's something that will be prioritized, investigations into Trump's finances?
Look, I think this goes to the heart of the trust problem that we have in this country. We need transparency, we need daylight, we need accountability above all. And our bill, we should add, does cover the family members of senior officials in the executive branch and family members of Congress, because we're seeing this problem beyond the officials themselves, and we see that in the case of the president's family.
And just on the broader topic of bipartisanship, you guys passed a housing affordability bill. Trump has yet to sign it. He canceled the bill signing ceremony. Are you concerned that the president is standing in the way of bipartisanship, given what he did with the housing bill?
Well, that bill will become law, whether it gets signed or, the 10-day period expires. I wish he wasn't doing this. I think it should have been signed immediately. It should have been signed that day. This is, you had 85% of House members that voted supported this bill, and over 90% of the senators that voted that day voted in favor of this bill. You can't get those numbers to agree the sky's blue in this climate. Everybody was on board with this, and it will become law. It will help the American people. I wish it was signed quicker, though, for sure.
And Congresswoman, do you think Democrats are still incentivized to reach across the aisle, given what happened with the housing bill?
Look, we've got the narrowest margin in a generation. Right now, the way to actually get things done is to work together. And that's why, from day one, I've tried to find and create the common ground that we need. And the housing bill is a great example, and it will become law. And we will continue to work in every way we possibly can.
We got to leave the conversation there. Congressman, Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.